Okay. Yeah. Hello. Hello. So good morning for you and good evening for me.
Yeah, good evening, Caddy.
We're
Thank you
just
so
on the
much
other
for agreeing to
side
do
of the
this on.
moon.
Oh, yeah. Caddy, I want to just say, um, thank you so much for doing this on such short notice. I really do appreciate you kind of rearranging your schedule and making this all happen.
No, I am the one who's thankful because, for me, it's an honor to have you here. I can see, I was doing some research. I just saw you the other day having this, you know, so interesting chat that you had with Christian. And, um, and of course, I said to myself, I have to meet David and understand how did you, achieve, this excellent pronunciation, and also how you get here, being a teacher. I want to know you. First of all, let me introduce this chat box for you, right? This place. Can you hear
Yeah,
me well?
please.
Can you hear me well? Yes?
Yeah, yep,
Okay. Okay. This is a Facebook group, right? It's a small, cozy place, friendly place, okay, in the platform that Facebook, has to do this kind of communities there, okay? And there are around 3,700 people there from different parts of the world, and they are all, interested into developing their English skills, right? Maybe writing, maybe reading, and of course speaking. And the main idea is this, right? Having a place where you can meet friends and start chatting, start talking, right? The idea came from Pasquale Cangiano, who is the administrator of Christian Sanders, and of course Christian. Christian was our, the leitmotif of all this, you know, meeting friends and having English as a pretext. Only, we have this
yep,
willingness, is that correct to say? Willingness, to meet friends
yep, yep,
and
yeah,
enjoying, our these moments, to meet people and use our English. Okay, I am from Argentina. In fact, I am from Ecuador. I am a psychologist, and I've been teaching, for about 20 years or more. Okay, my English is not perfect. I am an eternal learner. Okay, and okay, that is me, and that is the
yeah.
chat box. And you are now here in the chat box. Everyone here is going to be delighted to meet you, right? So I think most of them may know you already, okay? But you are more from Instagram. I think you are more into Instagram than Facebook. Is that true? Okay, now that is me. Now I want to know about you. Okay,
Yep.
where are you
Okay.
from? I mean, tell me about
Yeah.
you, please.
Sure, sure. Well, it's a complicated story, and I get a lot of strange looks when I go through airport security, when I go through customs and have my passport checked, and that's because I'm Indian. I was born and raised in Brunei, and I've also lived in a few different places, but never in India. So my passport, every time I renewed it, it was in like someplace outside of India, and it was not in Brunei either. So my passport would say it's an Indian passport. My name is David Rajaraman, and it's an Indian name. Um, Place of birth Brunei, place of issue like right now it's Japan because I just got it renewed last year, and it was issued at the Indian embassy in Japan. So there you go. And I always kind of get a few additional questions, like, so you're Indian and you were born in Brunei. Your passport was issued in Japan? And they look at me again, like a couple of times, look back at my passport photo, make sure it's the same guy. So yeah, that's where I'm from. And I got into teaching by accident. My first university degree was aviation management. That's what I wanted to do. I mean, I wanted to be a pilot. That's what I wanted to do when I was in high school. So and my parents insisted that I get a university degree instead of just a pilot's license. So I found this course in Australia. It was only available at two universities in the country at the time, and I chose Australia just because with the currency exchange rates at the time, it was it was a lot more feasible, financially feasible than say going to the UK or the US for like an English tertiary education. So I went to Australia, did that degree program, ended up not being able to find a job with it in the aviation industry. I thought even if I don't become a pilot, I could fall back on the degree, and I wasn't able to. So I found this job in Japan. This was 2012 at a company that it's like a large corporation. They've got English conversation schools across the country, and they did their interviews. I don't think they still do them anymore in Australia, but at the time they were doing some interviews in Australia once a year, and it just kind of the timing worked out perfectly. Where I was in my last couple of months of university, they were doing the interviews, so I went for the interview and I got the job. Rest is history. And I came and did that for a year and a half. It involved teaching adults and kids from as from as early as 2 years old. I didn't have any 2-year-old students. I think the youngest kids that I taught were 4 or 5 years old, and I had no experience working with kids at the time. I hated it, and I to this day I actually hate working with kids. I don't teach kids anymore. Um, I just can't do it.
It's
So
difficult.
now,
It's difficult.
yeah, yeah.
Yes.
And for everybody who actually does work with kids and works well with kids, and I have plenty of colleagues, and I'm pretty now that I'm on social media, it's pretty easy to connect with other English teachers from all over the world. And for those who do teach kids, especially those who teach kids online, I have the highest respect for them. I find it impossible to keep their attention even when I'm right there in the same room with them. I just can't imagine how you do that online. So, and the short version of what I've been doing since then, I went and did engineering for 4 years in Malaysia. Uh, After that, moved back to Japan and taught English again for a little while. And I'm now working at a car sales and distribution company here in Japan. And I work in their planning, business development, and project management sort of stuff. Yeah.
So, well, then you are teaching as a secondary activity, not the main activity, or
Yeah.
maybe you're going to switch sometime because you're doing so good that I think that's in some point you are going to go over this way. And and so, why Japan? Why Japan? I mean, I understand all this movement, but why Japan? Why? Because
Uh,
you have been there. You've been there for not only once. I mean, you've been there more than once, and you come back there, right? So why Japan?
Love makes you do crazy things.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
the answer. Love's
yeah.
the answer.
My wife is Japanese. We
Okay.
got married last year, but we met on my first trip to Japan. So we'd been dating for like 5, 6 years when we got married last year. So it was time is the short version of it.
Good, so good, so good to know, so good to know. So well now, okay, so you are mostly giving lessons, online lessons, right? You
Yep.
are okay, very good. So is this? I mean, is it a possibility that I can name you and put some of the information in the chat box so they can know that you're there? Because I've seen that you have this kind of module lessons like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 12 days, like with a topic or with an objective, and you go through that. And I think they can be really useful for some of the members there. Okay.
Yeah.
Can I
Thank you.
do
I
that?
really appreciate that. I would totally appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Okay. I have seen that you are a member of our group. You don't
Yes, I
know.
am. I
Do you
am.
know?
Yeah,
When?
yeah. I mean, of course. I mean, I signed up for the group, so
Oh, but
yeah, of
this is
course.
like now, or it was before?
No, no. I'll tell you how it happened. So I actually have my own Facebook group as well, and um, the way that the group started off is that I started doing the online courses, um, and initially I wanted a test group, um, and I wanted to kind of actually let me rewind a little bit. So um, I started teaching online a couple of years ago when I was in my final year at university with engineering, and it was just kind of a side job just for a bit of additional income to fill in the gap between finishing university and then starting my job. And I had a number of students from all over the world, and I noticed that many of them um, had very similar questions, or they were struggling with similar points in their English learning. So instead of having to use lesson time to explain the same things, I wanted to create videos that they could just refer to in their own time. So I started posting videos on YouTube, um, and I thought, at the same time, if this gets additional traction and it actually grows, then this could be an additional source of income for me later on down the track. But one of my students who doesn't use YouTube very much, she's from Russia. She suggested that I go on Instagram and that I could post videos on Instagram as well. So I did, and initially I didn't think much of Instagram, so I just started like holding my phone in front of my face like this and just recording myself. Um, and then it just uh, it just blew up. Like I was using the hashtags and everything, but I just didn't expect it to become to grow so quickly, and it did. And so, and for the longest time, I was only on Instagram. I had stopped posting on YouTube because, again, this was just for my students. And as long as they could all watch the videos, it didn't really matter to me. And then, about a year after that, when I was after I'd been getting so many messages from my followers who I've never met, and I found like the most common question I get is, how do I become fluent in English? Right? And the thing is, like, I'd always give them like a really short answer, but I could perhaps share so much more on the topic. So I started putting my thoughts on paper. I was just typing up a Word document and thought, I'm going to write a script, I'm going to make a video, answer this question, and be done with it. And then that Word document just kept getting longer and longer and longer, because this was like a year after I'd started doing social media, where I knew about so many different resources that I wanted to share with people. Say, hey, you could use this, you can use this, you can do this. And I thought, man, this is way too long. Maybe I'll turn it into a series. And at which point I thought, there's nothing else like this on the internet. So why not make it an actual course, but still make it super affordable? Because the target audience is people who want to learn English and they want to improve their fluency. They want to know how, they want to be told what to do, but they don't want to spend a lot of money, or they can't afford to spend a lot of money. So they want to do it either for free or for very little. And I thought, okay, so let's make this whole course $1. And I did. It was $1.
$1.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, actually,
incredible.
before that, even I actually made this Facebook group and I made it for free. I thought, all you guys keep complaining about finding conversation partners. Let's make a Facebook group. We'll make it free. You guys can join it and you can meet each other and talk. And then that didn't work out. And I'm actually curious to hear your thoughts on how you run Chatbox with so many members. Like, the quality of the members we had in the Facebook group, and it was free, it just wasn't there. There's so many people there, like, who were inactive for one,
Yeah.
and then those who were active were there for the wrong reasons, and
Mhm.
they were there making the sincere members of the group uncomfortable, and they were taking value away from the group.
That's right.
So I thought there has to be some way to kind of moderate this, and I was doing it all by myself. So I thought, okay, let's make it a $1 online course, and then the people who enroll in that online course can get access to the group. And oh wait, no, sorry, let me. That's wrong. That's wrong. I made. I thought I'm gonna do weekly online lessons, and I was gonna do a pronunciation course about accents, and it would be a subscription-based thing, so $10 a month, and members of that who are paying the subscription could join the Facebook group. And if they're doing a subscription, it's clearly going to be people who are committed and serious and sincere. So I created this Facebook group for them, and some of the members who joined when it was free, and people who were active and actually serious about everything, I let them stay in the group instead of kicking them out. But everyone else, I kicked them out. So it went from 800 members in the group down to 70 in like a couple of weeks. And one of those members who joined when it was free, who's been contributing to the group more than perhaps anybody else, her name is Annie, and she's from Indonesia. She is also a member of
Yes,
the chat box, I
I
believe.
know her, yes.
So she shared a video from the chat box group, and I wasn't able to view it because I wasn't a member of Chatbox. So
So you
just
had to come.
yes, exactly. So that's the long, long story. But yeah, the reason why I joined Chatbox was to watch that one video that Annie shared from the group.
So good to know. So good to know. Yes, well, in the chat books, it is some kind of for me, it's like a miracle of friendship, right? Because first of all, um, at the beginning, right, I was very talkative there. I was trying to comment everything, and maybe it's because at the beginning it was called Canguro English Chat Box, okay,
Hmm.
with the help of Christian and Pasquale and the permission, of course, I used the same name, right? Canguro English at the beginning. And the people who came there, I think they considered the chat box like the little sister of Canguro English Official, right? Canguro Official's not chat box, Facebook group. And I started naming the most talkative and friendly people in the chat box. I started asking them if they could be my moderators. So I mean, I am not alone there. I may not be there all the time, but the chat box is alive. It's incredible the amount of activity that is there. In Canguro officials, you have to post material that is your own. I mean, you have to make it, right? But in the chat box, you're free to put whatever you want to put. The only thing is that it has to be related to learning English, to it has to be related to something, from English learning, right? But there are people, for example, there are people who love playing games, right? And they share these games, describing things and word games and everything. They share that, and they are my moderators there, moderators. So I think that helps. Okay. Another thing is that when I found people that I considered not similar but complementary, okay, I think the connection is not working. Wait. Can you hear me well? Can you hear me well?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can hear you well.
The thing is that when I found people who were like complementary, I started making them friends. Okay, I would say, for example, uh, Carmen meet Pedro or Maria from this place introduce you to this person and everything. And so they became friends and they started making small groups by messenger, you know, and I think that worked there. Okay, but now it's incredibly the amount of activity that you have there. Of course, that you can see that the most active people there are maybe 20. Okay,
Hmm.
20 people make this thing, keep alive, and the rest are silent. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
That is a thing. But it's growing. I didn't want to be a huge place. I prefer this to stay like 4,000. I don't know, but this is for me. I don't know if you can hear me because I feel this.
Uh,
You hear me well, right?
Um, I can hear you fine. I don't hear any
Anything,
interruption or,
anything.
uh,
Okay.
yeah,
Well, that is the thing, right? You know what I want to ask you?
yep.
Yes. First, how did you get this incredible pronunciation? Like, because you don't sound non-native. I mean, you sound like a native. And besides this, which is something that I have to say, I have another question. Uh, I mean, have you heard all these, comments and things that are related to not necessarily aim to be like a native, right? Even though I consider and I congratulate because this, pronunciation you have is terrific. So I think it may be like nonsense, but I need to know where and how you get that pronunciation, okay, that excellent, pronunciation you have, and if you consider necessary to develop this kind of skill.
Okay. When you say, is it necessary to get the same
And
accent
native,
as a native?
yes.
Okay. Yeah, sure, sure. I think that's a really important question to talk about. Um, so first of all, as to where I get it, it's to be honest, it's not something that I intentionally worked on. I didn't, I wasn't doing exercises or practicing my accent or anything like that. It came naturally, but in hindsight, now as someone who's involved with language education, and
Mhm.
now that I have to answer these sorts of questions, I had to think back to how I learned languages growing up and what exactly I did that was different to my peers. Because even the people that grew up where I did don't sound like me. Some of them do, but the majority don't. And so, what was it that I was doing, and the small number of my peers were doing differently? And it really just boils down to accepting and embracing the fact that pronunciation is a motor skill. And then if we, I mean, that's kind of summarizing it into just one point. And then if we extrapolate that, what that means in practice is that every language has its own unique set of sounds that are used in it, and the set of sounds include intonation patterns that are common within that language to convey various emotions and ideas in the way that it's used. And there are going to be some of those sounds and intonation patterns that might be shared with other languages, and then there will be others that are not shared. And so when a learner approaches a new language and they've already got a foundation in some other language, let's say it's their native language, then the mistake that so many make is that they will, instead of learning the new sounds in the new language and learning the intonation patterns in the new language, they will basically interpret everything in the new language in terms of their native language. So what that, like a simple example of that could be, and I'm going to use Japanese for the example. Um, the example of that could be, in Japanese there are 5 vowel sounds, um, and in English we have 20 vowel sounds. So when a Japanese speaker approaches English with a Japanese foundation, what they tend to do is, instead of learning to move their mouth and their muscles to produce the English sounds, they interpret the 20 English vowels as one of these 5 vowels that they have in their native language. So instead of pronouncing the actual English vowel sound, they will just kind of force it to fit into one of these 5. And so because of that, I once had this student who was struggling with differentiating the pronunciation of collar on your shirt and color, as in the color red. And it's the difference between them is just the vowel sound. It's that first vowel sound right up between the C and the L, collar and color. But because what he was doing is, instead of learning the ah and the sound, he was interpreting both of those sounds in terms of the one of the 5 Japanese vowel sounds, which was the sound. So he pronounced collar as kala, and he pronounced color as kala, and they both sound the same,
That's
obviously.
fine.
But right, so it's a motor skill, and to produce sounds we have the articulation system, and we need to, just the same as how we learn any other motor skill, whether it's kicking a ball or riding a bicycle or shooting a basketball, serving a tennis ball. It needs to be developed by doing it, by developing the muscle memory. And and of course, before even doing that, we need to actually be listening for it and be attentive to it. And I think the mistake that a lot of learners make, is they don't even make that first step of noticing and paying attention to the fact that there are all of these new sounds in the new language. And one thing that can contribute to that is, instead, I guess, if we think about how young children are better at acquiring pronunciation and accents than adults, one hypothesis for why that is the case is because children learn sounds by listening. And when they listen, they're able to pay attention to the differences, and they're really just trying to replicate what they hear. Whereas what adults do is, when they approach a new language, straight away they're reading. And so when they're looking at this word in English, they're actually the first thing that they're thinking of is not, hey, I want to listen to this and just hear what it sounds like. It's instead, I want to look at this word, and I want to take all of these English letters here, and kind of above it, I'm going to write or imagine the script in my native language, and I'm just going to sound that off phonetically. And that's kind of the difference. So because I grew up speaking 3 languages, Tamil, Malay, Japanese, and that I was uh, using them all, like kind of switching between them very frequently, I had to, or I naturally developed this ability to listen for the different sounds and then have to produce them.
So that is amazing, and it's totally, totally true. You know that I watched a video from you where you were talking about, I think it was like a similarity that you made between learning the language, developing the language, and training some kind of a sport or training or doing
Yeah.
exercise, right? Is excellent. It was something about motivation, I think. I don't recall exactly, but the message was super. It was strong, like being, like make it as when you practice a sport that you want to get, top of it, right? So, um, in this moment that you're talking, that this is motor, right, is something related to our skill that physically that we have to obtain, is practice. So it's practice, and it's listening, Okay, and it's mirroring maybe also. Okay, yeah, you're right, you're right. But then the aim is to sound native, or the aim is to pronounce correctly. What, in your opinion, could be the most important objective? I mean, the aim, the target is to speak like a native or to pronounce correctly.
Well, to could I share a story about this fascination that people have with sounding like a native? So I'm not a native, right? When I was a student in Australia, I was in South Bank in Brisbane City, and it's South Bank is this little park by the river near the city center, and they've got a bunch of cafes. So I went there to buy a coffee, and the lady who served me was Irish from Ireland. I mean, not even Northern Ireland from the UK, but actually the country Ireland. So, if anything, she was more native than either you or me. She like English is her native language. But and she was speaking with a native accent. She was speaking with her Irish accent. And if she was to speak that way to anybody in Ireland, she would have no problem whatsoever communicating. She'd be easily understood. But the thing is that that was my first time meeting someone from Ireland. I had never, up to that point, met someone from there, and I'd never actually had to listen to that accent. I couldn't understand anything she was saying. I didn't even know if she was speaking English. And I ended up saying that to her, which was a big mistake because I ended up upsetting her. I said, "I'm sorry, are you speaking English?" And she did not take that very well. And then and she said, "Well, I'm speaking English. Why don't you understand what I'm saying?" And and the thing is, she wasn't even saying anything complicated. It's the usual sort of exchange when you buy a coffee, like, "Would you like it here or to go?" or that sort of stuff. And I wasn't able to understand her. And I think the story is one that you, as a learner, you ought to expose yourself to as many different accents as possible, because if your goal for learning a language is to communicate and connect with people, then there are people all over the world and they all sound different, and it's going to be worth your investment to get familiar with that. But as far as like how important is it to have a certain accent, it really depends who you're speaking to. Like if I was living in Ireland, I would be most relatable to everybody around me if I had an Irish accent, and I would be most easily understood by everyone around me if I had an Irish accent. Um, at the same time, if I speak the way I do right now, I think a lot of people find it pretty easy to understand me. So it I mean, I think it doesn't really matter if you have a native accent or not. And it doesn't matter if I was living in Ireland, it wouldn't matter if I had an Irish accent or a native accent or not, native to that area at least. Instead, I would be perfectly fine speaking the way that I do right now. I'd be able to communicate easily with anyone in Ireland, anyone around me. Whereas that lady from Ireland who was living and working in Australia at the time has, for her job, has to serve customers from all over the world, because that place in South Bank, they get a lot of tourists. They get people from all over the world. And of course, Australians, who many of whom are also not familiar with the Irish accent. So it would have been helpful for her job, to neutralize her accent just a little bit
A little
to
bit.
make it
Mm,
easier for more of her customers to understand her.
that's right.
So I think which accent is best for you, or what kind of pronunciation is best for you, depends on who you're speaking to and who you're communicating with. And also it's a question of how clearly you're able to communicate with those people, with your target audience or your target listeners.
Totally agree with you. Totally agree with you. Okay, well, now I want to invite you. I want to invite you because I am going to share this. I don't want to make it, so too long, okay?
Sure.
I would like to invite you maybe to a second round, okay? Maybe a second round could be answering some questions from the members, okay? I can ask them some questions and I can, maybe we can go make a live, at the Facebook and answer some questions from them, okay? But let's make it, maybe next week or the other week, small conversation, because I love the thing. I mean, I love the way you are doing your activity, how is your approach to teaching, and of course, um, uh, it's not something very difficult to pay, because it's not expensive. It's good for the members to know that also. And I will share this. I already shared one of your videos, okay?
Oh, wow.
So, yes,
Thank you.
before, a
Thank
minute
you.
before coming in, I think I shared about the native speakers overrated, something like that. I started to, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, because
Thank you. Thank you so
yeah.
much.
So you're going to see that some people are going to make comments. They are very talkative, very talkative. So let's do that, please. Okay, don't be around. Be somehow, around. I'm going to continue sharing the information that you you are doing it by Instagram. You are on Instagram doing a lot of very active there. You are right.
Yeah, I'm actually active on like everything now. I because like about a year ago is when I made the transition and I decided, you know what, I'm actually going to do this social media thing. So I'm like on everything now, like LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and I'm just posting the same videos on like all the platforms at once. Just that because I was doing Instagram for longer, I've got more followers there, but I'm actually like on everything.
Mm.
So yeah, wherever people are most comfortable, they can find me there.
So let's do that, okay? Because I really want the other members to ask you questions, right? They may want to know you better, okay?
Sure. Thank you so much. I'd love to. Yeah. And actually, time-wise, if we could do like this time next week, that would be
Yeah,
awesome. If not, I mean,
maybe. Yeah.
yeah, I can work out some other time too.
Yes, maybe yes. Maybe at this time, some of the members are not going to be there, because I think that the most of the people are from Europe, maybe. So now they are
Mm,
sleeping. Okay, if we
yep.
go live streaming, it not maybe it's not going to be that amount of people watching us. But
Yep.
let's try it. Let's do it. Let's do it. First of all, I'm going to ask them for questions. Okay, so
Sure.
I can be prepared with the questions of my friends.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Caddy. By the way, is Caddy your whole name? And am I pronouncing it right, Catty, or is that short for Catherine? Or
You are coming into, how do I say, sand, dirty sand, when you are coming into a ground.
quicksand?
Pardon me.
Is it quicksand, like the stuff that sucks you in?
That's right, quicksand.
Quicksand. Quicksand.
You are
Yeah.
coming into quicksand there with that question. My name is Noemi, Naomi in Spanish,
Okay.
Noemi de Lourdes, Lourdes like a city in France, Lourdes, okay?
Yep.
Noemí de Lourdes Ortega, my surname, Pareja, my mother's surname, okay? Pay attention. Noemí de Lourdes Ortega Pareja. And my nickname is Katy.
Wait, which part of your name has Cathy in it?
Nowhere. My dad, when I was
Yep.
born, my dad named me Catita, little Catty, Catita, right? And
Right.
then
Right.
I kept Catty because people call me Catty, right? Cathy, Cathy, Cathy. But my real name is not that. Is so that is a long story.
That's
So,
awesome. I love it. I love that story. So I'm gonna call you Kathy. Is that
yes,
okay? Is
of course, of
okay?
course.
All right. Awesome. I'll stick with Kathy. Cool.
So, David, I'm so thankful. Let's stop now. You have to do some, maybe I imagine you have a lot to do. Saturday morning for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Saturday morning.
Okay, you're
Um.
dealing well with the coronavirus right there, right?
No, I haven't caught it at least no, so far.
Don't. No, but I
I'm
mean,
not planning to.
in general, in Japan, you
Yeah.
are dealing well with coronavirus.
Yeah. Things seem to have settled down. Yeah, they're no longer in lockdown even in Tokyo, and they're getting like uh, 30 to 40 cases per day over the last 1 week, and like the healthcare system is like they seem to be coping with it as well.
Of
And
course.
what they announced recently is that they're able to treat a lot of the patients without hospitalizing them and that. So many of them are actually they've worked out a way of treating them to actually help this patients recover naturally. We haven't had any deaths so far in the last few weeks.
Good to know
Yeah.
that. Good to know. Okay, my dear David, I let you go. Thank you very much. I'm going to upload now. Upload this to,
Thank you.
okay? Bye.
Thank you, Kathy. Bye.
Thank
You have a
you very
wonderful day.
much.
Bye.
Bye bye.